I know, the internet is full of people telling you to start doing certain things and stop doing other things with your writing. But did you know that you can stop interneting at any time? You can actually turn all this stuff off. I didn't know that until recently. Today, we're going to discuss some ways that you should stop writing like. I should stop writing stuff like that last sentence because it really didn't make any sense. These are some problematic mindsets or some objectives that you might be trying to fulfill in your writing that are actually problematic and things that you should switch up once you become aware of them. Beginning with writing the way that someone else tells you to write. There's going to be a lot of people on your writing journey who you give your writing to for advice. This could be critique partners, could be people in a writing group, editors, beta readers. These people are very helpful, and these are all very important processes for improving your writing. But these people are almost always, without fail, completely wrong about what you should do to improve your writing, while simultaneously also almost always having a valid point about how a piece can be improved. Feedback should generally be used as a means of detecting problems, and any recommendations about how to fix those problems should just be used as a way to give you more information about the problem. This isn't true in every single situation. For something like a copy editor or a proofreader, that's obviously different because they will be pointing out more black and white issues. Like if you have a word that's misspelled or you're using the wrong version of there for a sentence, that's obviously something that should be fixed. But when it comes to things like developmental stuff or even prose flow or the clarity of your writing, if someone suggests a fix or a change, you should primarily recognize that that suggestion just indicates that there's a problem with that part of the writing. You are the only one who knows fully what you want to accomplish with your story, and you need to figure out the best way to do that. Most of the suggestions that people make for changing something related to a plot or how a scene plays out or how some magic or technology should work, most of the time those changes are just to make something different, not necessarily better. As a general rule, anyone who's advising you on your writing should be looked at as someone whose job it is to find problems, not someone who's swaying you to write a certain way. Think about where they get confused, where they lose interest in the work, where do they misinterpret what's happening. Make sure that you have a clear vision for what you want to achieve with your writing, and don't just go off making every single change that somebody suggests, because you're going to end up with something that doesn't reflect your vision. When someone reading your work finds a problem, it is almost always a problem, and you should definitely not ignore that problem. But also don't feel obligated to use any of their suggestions to make the problem go away. Next way that you should stop writing: with too much freedom. Now I have to preface this with a caveat. Freedom around the subject matter of your writing is very important, and you, at least in my opinion, should not have any restrictions on that. You should be allowed to write whatever you want under no restrictions. That does not mean that restrictions around certain aspects of your writing are necessarily a bad thing, though. I sometimes get comments from people on these videos lamenting the fact that a certain piece of advice or a certain method is going to make them be boxed in, and that that method or medium is going to restrict them in some way, and that restriction will result in lower quality writing. A lot of people think that complete freedom breeds creativity, that having no restrictions is the way to get your best writing, but that's not necessarily true. Creativity, almost by definition, requires some sort of limitations. A creative solution to a problem is not a solution that you come up with when there's unlimited resources and time and everything else available. Something as simple as the length of a story is a good example of a restriction that actually breeds creativity. Think about something like flash fiction, or even just trimming down a chapter to meet a certain length requirement. Trying to say more, trying to get more story across with less words, almost always leads to better writing. It makes it more difficult to write. It makes it more difficult to get across everything you want to get across if you have a restriction on length. But it almost always, if you can pull it off, leads to a better piece in the end. Limitations and restrictions show up all of the time in the plots that we write as well. The best stories usually involve characters who face long odds with extreme limitations. This is why underdogs are such common protagonists, why villains tend to have unlimited, massive resources, while heroes are trying to get by with a box of thumbtacks and a mostly dry Sharpie. Limitations, whether they be around the length of a story or something within the plot itself, if you've got magic system limitations or real world technological limitations or some other limitation that's affecting your characters, this is what breeds creativity. Restrictions, when properly used, can force you to be more creative and produce better writing. And the last way to stop writing that we'll talk about today, for someone who isn't your audience. Personal preference is a massive factor when it comes to a reader liking or not liking a novel. Give a otherwise great novel to the wrong reader and they're likely to rate it poorly. I don't have firm numbers on this, but I'm guessing when you account for things like genre and style, any given novel, if you were to just give it to a random representative subset of the population, would probably only appeal to like 20% of those people. The other 80% would either not connect with it or outright hate it. Any novel that consistently gets like a 5-star review is inherently biased because the people who are reading that novel are probably a lot of the people who that novel would appeal to in the first place. That 5-star is not a representative sample across the population unless a novel is like super popular and has a ton of reviews. And that's not a bad thing. Part of the reason that we have genres, part of the reasons that there's different authors, part of the reason that everybody isn't just all reading the same novel is because different novels appeal to different people. Different readers have different preferences for what they want to read about, and so they will gravitate to certain novels and not gravitate to other novels. This is a normal part of just the reader experience, but it's something that you, as a writer, need to keep in mind. Trying to write something that appeals to everyone is a losing game. You just can't thread the needle to compromise on everything that drives different preferences, because a lot of those preferences are completely contradictory. Writing a novel that everyone likes means writing a novel that no one likes. You have to be especially careful with this because as a writer, you might encounter some of these people as critique partners or beta readers who are either just unfamiliar with your genre or have preferences that go against your story. You need to make sure that you aren't changing what you're writing to appeal to people who ultimately aren't going to be your audience. Ultimately, your novel needs to be tailored to the audience, and tailoring it to an audience means that there's a bunch of people who just aren't going to like it, and you shouldn't be trying to make those people happy because that's going to pull you away from your vision. You need to understand who your novel is for and write it for that person. This might mean that your work won't appeal to 80% of people you encounter out there, but that's totally fine. Write a novel that your audience will love, not something that everybody will love, because doing the latter is mostly impossible. Speaking of impossible things, apparently writing a conclusion to this video was impossible because I didn't do it. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.